Having trouble with navel orangeworm in the orchard? Sidetrack Now Miso Mating Disruption is your best bet to minimize loss and maximize profitability. Used with Tresse's new multi-gender lures for your monitoring program, you can achieve the quality yields you deserve. Contact your local sales rep today.
Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with Pacific Nut Producer Magazine, and with an increase in hazelnut acreage going into the ground in the Pacific Northwest, we're seeing a lot more double density plantings going on, and there are some problems that can be associated with this practice. And so I talked with Rich Birkemeier today from Birkemeier Nursery to share some of his insights and precautions that growers should consider when adopting this practice.
Today, a lot of growers are planting their orchards in what we call a high-density planting. That is, for example, 10 feet apart in a row, the rows being 20 feet apart, or 10 by 20 planting, with the idea that down the road they will thin them to end up with a 20-foot square planting. And their goal being to have a 20 by 20 square orchard. What seems to happen, though, after they've made the gains of doubling their crop for the first several years, they get to the point where they begin to crowd, and their goal all of a sudden changes to benefiting from next year's crop, thinking that if they take every other tree out, logically, their crop is going to drop in half. That's sacrificing their beginning long-term goal for the next year's short-term gain. And what happens is they procrastinate, leave them in next year for one more year's crop, and the next year they find that temporary tree is bigger and it's interfered more with their permanent tree, and they're still in the same place, wanting to sacrifice their long-term goal for the next year's crop. And that procrastinating 1 year at a time puts them in a position where all of a sudden the expense and the work involved in removing that temporary tree goes up exponentially. And so close planting is not for everyone, and it's sometimes better for some people to just plant a 20 by 20 permanent spacing, focus on that, the tree's getting up the size quickly and doing well, and not have to plan a big work project into their life 10 years down the road. Some people are not prepared to do that. I also found in my own family, I didn't know it till we got there, but there are some people in my family that just couldn't stand to cut out a perfectly healthy tree. And again, close planting is not for everybody. The main advantage, in my opinion today, for a close planted orchard is that we're dealing with new varieties that we don't know everything about. We know data from the college, and that's just 5 years of data collected on them in a 8-year trial. But we as growers are going to learn more over the next 10 years about each of these new varieties. So we can actually plant two varieties together and defer the decision on what we like best 10 years down the road. When we learn more about them, and perhaps markets change, and we find what processors prefer, but it's a way of deferring what we don't know today 10 years down the road, and diversifying what we don't know today amongst two different varieties. That's the biggest advantage to a close planted orchard, but you're still faced with an ultimate decision of how do you keep them from overcrowding one another. We also find if we leave them too long, they ultimately, without either some severe pruning or removing trees, they will kind of hit a wall. And being too close together, the production goes down, quality of the nuts goes down, and ultimately they need to be thinned in some way or another. In my opinion, it's better to take them out a year too early than to leave them a year too long. And that way you don't interfere with your ultimate goal, which is a 20 by 20 foot spacing.
Thank you, Rich. Read more about best hazelnut growing practices in your monthly issue of Pacific Nut Producer Magazine. If you don't currently receive it, be sure to subscribe for free today at pacificnutproducer.com. I'm Matthew Malcolm, pacificnutproducer.com.